Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing cash. And unfortunately, I'm not one that really wanted this channel to be discussing this stuff all that much, but it has broad ramifications. I mean, banks and the law sort of run parallel with one another. So there's always kind of a chicken and egg argument between, okay, which came first, banking or lawyers? To my mind, banks are creations of law, so it's pretty clear that banking sort of came second, but still there's a lot of reasonable folks that can disagree on that. I find it interesting, for example, in the English language, the same etymology, the root words of certain legal notions. For example, the bench, which is what a judge sits on a bench. Well, that has the same root word as bank. And in fact, in the appellate divisions in the United States, where you don't necessarily have a full appeals court hearing a case, but you'll have a more limited number of judges, oftentimes 3, you'll often hear it said that they are sitting en banc. So B-A-N-C, but still, again, bank. You know, you're still dealing with sort of the same root words, the same etymology here, the same history of these terms. And the reason I'm making this video is because there has been this weird move the last few years to really ramp up getting people into cashless. Go cashless, go cashless. Now, look, I have a credit card. I like there are times when not having to use a bunch of cash is absolutely great. But anybody who thinks that going to a world where you have no privacy in your personal financial transactions is pretty naive. That going to that is a good idea, that's naive thinking in my mind. You have to have privacy in your financial transactions. I think Europe now, somebody was telling me, or one of the countries in Europe, you can't do anything in cash over $1,000 or equivalent of $1,000, 1,000 euros or whatever. What is that? I mean, the USSR could not have imposed that. I mean, that's just crazy to me. I mean, how can you say there's personal freedom in a place where you can't spend more than the equivalent of $1,000 without having your name taken down and every other piece of data about you and why are you doing this and all of this? I mean, I don't remember it well, but I remember sort of the aftermath of the passage of the money laundering statutes in the United States, which aren't that old. They came around in '87, you know, and before that they had statutes, yes, I'm well aware, and, you know, going back the foreign bank account reporting and things of that nature. But I think it's interesting now that the term money laundering will just be used sort of euphemistically as just that's something bad that's going on. Well, it wasn't even illegal until 1987. The practice of that wasn't considered illegal because the thinking behind it was it's really none of the state's business what people do with their money. Now, they sold that in connection with the so-called war on drugs, which I'm not even going to get into in this video. But the financial side of it, it had tremendous long-term ramifications, not to the positive for the sort of free people of Middle Earth, if you want to call it that. Whatever you want to call it, you know, just the regular Joes walking around who maybe do have a cash business and want to go buy a boat in cash or something of this nature. Are those people really nefarious? Or do we really need to be, you know, knowing our customer on every transaction over $1,000? No, I don't think so at all. It self-evidently makes no sense, and it's self-evidently a negative for people who just want to live their lives. I thought of making this video after reading a recent article in the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, BOT Zeroes In on Cash Transaction Fees. And I think this is funny because the way that this is couched within the article, and I really do urge people who are watching this video, go read that article in detail. But the way that this is couched is as a, well, cash transaction fees, these banks, they're all making a bunch of money off of doing their business. Well, that's the business the banks have done since time immemorial. That's what banks do. They're in the business of money. Are we unaware of this? I like this in this modern era, I don't know what you want to call it, the last few years, especially as we see certain, in my opinion, structurally unsound banks having serious problems. But there's been this sort of meme that's popped up that banks are like altruistic, or that they're supposed to be like an NGO or something insofar as they're there for the community, and they're, and all of this stakeholder stuff, whatever that means, which nobody can ever explain what a stakeholder is. I know the legal definition of a shareholder. What is a stakeholder? A person who holds a stake? So like Van Helsing, they kill vampires? In any event, the point I'm trying to make, and honestly, all hyperbole aside, everyone should kind of be concerned about their personal financial latitude, if you will. One of the things that caused me to fall in love with Thailand was exactly that, the financial freedom, just the freedom you have from being here in Thailand. And one of the coolest things I remember when I first got here was like, oh, you can just walk up to a bank, like deposit machine, and send somebody $500 equivalent, 15,000 baht, throw it in the deposit machine, put in their bank account number, verify that that's indeed their account, and boom, that money's just moved instantaneously. That has led to a flexibility in Thailand's economy that, in my opinion, is unrivaled anywhere that I've ever seen. Insofar as the cash economy in Thailand is extremely flexible and adaptable and able to operate well, extremely efficiently, economically speaking. All of this augurs well. Now, am I against digital payment platforms or cryptocurrencies or any of this? No, they can augment efficiency, if you will, but if it comes at the complete expense or evisceration, if you will, or erasure of all financial privacy and all ability to efficiently and privately, privacy is not a bad word. There's nothing wrong with being private in your transactions. That's okay. There's a problem when you're doing something illegal. Now, I have a problem where they've now decided that moving money in and of itself could be illegal. I always kind of viewed money as a utility. It's sort of inert. It's like electricity, if you will. It moves through certain systems, and it sort of invigorates certain aspects of the economy, and we all kind of move on. Hopefully we all profit a little bit, make a little bit of money, and we all go back to feeding our families. But long story short, this is not a narrative or a meme that I feel has come from the grassroots up. I don't think there's any steel workers out there sitting there going, man, I really wish that we could just have more transparency in interpersonal financial transactions at the lowest possible level in the economy. I don't think there's any plumbers running around out there saying that that's something that they really care about. I'm just not buying that, because that's not the case. I mean, nobody's really asking for that per se. Now, more convenient banking, of course. The ability to more easily send money to somebody, of course. The ability to more easily bill people and bring in your money, of course. I'm not a Luddite. I use the internet. I use various financial platforms that allow you to operate on the internet. These are modern marvels. They're great. But this push to just completely eradicate all privacy in personal financial dealings, this just, to my mind, makes no sense. In any event, again, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com, BOT zeroes in on cash transaction fees, quoting directly, as digital payments increase, the Bank of Thailand is focusing on cash users by adjusting banks' fee structures. Quoting further, the adjustment is part of central bank efforts to promote digital payments. I say that again. Central bank efforts to promote digital payments. When did it ever become part of the central bank's mandate to promote any kind of payments? How about you just deal with the payments that people make and deal with, the central bank is supposed to be there, and I'm not one of these people that's anti-central banks. Central banks can be very, very useful, but the central bank is supposed to be there to facilitate the economy via sound money policy. They're not there to nudge us around. They're not our shepherds or something. The central bank, that's not their purpose. The central bank's purpose is much like a utility to maintain the integrity of the currency, and also maintain the integrity of the financial systems. I'll give it that. But to promote something, really? Is that really what we want them doing? I don't know that I think that's what I want them to do. Anywhere, United States, here, wherever. I got massive issues with this Fed coin and all this stuff that the Fed is thinking about doing. In any event, quoting further, the adjustment is part of central bank efforts to promote digital payments and move towards a less cash-reliant society. As the title suggests, who asked for that? And maybe Thailand shouldn't be, and I'll get into that in a moment. Quoting further, the regulator is paying greater attention to some consumer segments that do not use digital payments. You mean the people that like using cash? Quoting further, quote, the central bank plans to discuss the bank's fees for cash transactions with the aim of finding a balance on the issue, unquote, Ms. Wipawin said. And that person is quoted in there. You can read that article and figure out that person's background. But again, the aim of finding a balance on the issue, no, there is no balance on any issue. That draws you into a dialectic that both sides are reasonable on. Now let's come up with a compromise. No. Digital transactions are okay in and of themselves. And it's perfectly fine in my mind if people want to use that. But the notion that it's an either or and we're coming to a compromise on it, I don't love that, because that is, let's say, disingenuous to the reality on the ground at this particular moment. There is no one on the street level in the cash economy who is just clamoring for cash to be less cash reliant. Let's be clear, the people that are in the cash economy here, street food vendors, all those kinds of folks, they're not up in arms for this. This is from a bunch of banks who are saying, oh, we really like, and I'm sure there's reasons for it. It's probably more efficient, it's probably cheaper to take all this stuff digital. You don't have to handle all that paper, which means you don't need all that fixed capital infrastructure in order to facilitate those kind of transactions over the long term. But at the end of the day, you chose to be banks. This is what you do. Why are you? And the other one is I really wonder if folks are thinking about, in the banking sector, thinking about this in the long term. At what point do you essentially make your system so efficient that you essentially efficient yourself out of existence, or nobody needs you anymore because it's all just on a digital platform, which is run by some semi-AI technology? And none of this, by the way, is outlandish. I mean, we could genuinely see that with quantum computing and things down the road. Hard to say exactly how this is all going to play out. What I do know is I've seen this twice in earnest. What saved Thailand's economy was her cash economy. That was the buffer. When the what I call the financialized economy, this sort of parallel thing that runs in tandem in Thailand, and runs pretty well in tandem with Thailand, with Thailand's cash economy. When the financial economy has gone pear-shaped and gone to bad places, it's been the cash economy that's been the buffer for the whole country, for the overall economy of the whole system. It's sort of like attacking one's own immune system because you think you can do something better than your own immune system. That's not the way it's probably going to work. The naturally occurring, the sort of organic economy that has grown up over the hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, that this place has existed, is probably going to be more resilient in the long run than will be some contrived system that's relatively new. I think that there is no doubt about that, if you really look to history as a guide. So the thing that concerns me is this notion that somehow everyone is running around clamoring for this system, and B, what really concerns me is, let's say we go to a completely cash unreliant society. What happens if there's a liquidity crisis in Brazil and nobody here in Thailand is aware that the bankers in Thailand got overexposed to Brazilian investments, and now that's causing a ripple effect into the Thai economy and everything closes down? There is no cash economy now to act as a buffer against that issue. And that is a situation that I don't think any of us here in Thailand really want to be in.